Welcome to Around the Sun. I'm your host, Keith Gill, Commissioner of the Sun Belt Conference. We're grateful you've joined us and hope you'll return often as we share stories from around the Sun Belt Conference. In conjunction with the 50th anniversary of Title IX, we're recognizing some of the pioneers and trailblazers of women's athletics from our Sun Belt Conference institutions. Today, our special guest is Karen Aston. Karen competed for Little Rock's women's basketball team from 1985 to 1987, leading her team in scoring as a junior, and has gone on to become one of the most successful coaches in women's college basketball. She's been a head coach at Charlotte, North Texas, the University of Texas, and is currently in her first season leading the basketball program at UTSA. Karen was the 2017 Big 12 Conference Coach of the Year and was also one of 4 finalists for the Naismith National Coach of the Year honor. Karen, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you could make time to join us today to share your story.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's obviously a privilege and honor to be a part of this celebration, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your story, because it will be so inspirational for so many. So Karen, you grew up in Bryant, Arkansas, which is just outside of Little Rock, and you played basketball at Bryant High School, winning a state championship in 1982. Tell us a bit about playing on that championship team and also the impact your coach had on you during your basketball career.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Webb was the coach at Bryant at the time that I played there, and he literally transformed girls basketball at Bryant. And I mean, if you study the history of Bryant, they've had a long-standing tradition, and he was really the maestro of all of that. I mean, he was I didn't know it at the time, but he was just so far ahead of the thought processes of how to coach women, and his thoughts were, I'm going to coach them just like I'm going to coach guys, and he pushed us and really helped us, I think, see our potential. And it culminated with a state championship, and he won several after that. But I think as far as I'm concerned, he just fueled a passion. And I think that's what teachers do. I mean, when you talk to kids that graduate from high school and they move on and they go into whatever profession they choose, there's always someone, some educator of some sort, a parent, a family member, someone that just took whatever their passion was and helped them realize it. And I think Tom was one of those people that, you didn't know it at the time, but he was really pushing you past what you thought was something you were capable of.
Yeah, and so and kind of continuing along that theme about how Coach Webb inspired you, it seems like you have a lot of players on the teams that you have recruited that have won championships or had a lot of success in high school. And so obviously that seems like that's an important part of the traits that you look for when you're trying to build a team. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I've been coaching long enough that you get a chance to learn from the things that you do well and the things that you don't do well and mistakes that maybe you've made. And one of the things that I've had a chance to really reflect on is, those championship teams that I was a part of, either as a player or as a coach, what did those players have in common? Because it's a player's game. It always will be. And what did those players have in common as opposed to teams that were a struggle to coach? Because you'll have those too if you coach long enough. And the common denominator to me is what did they grow up experiencing? Did they experience the ability to win and push themselves to a higher level? And I think that I say this a lot in the coaching ranks as far as talking to other coaches. When you're recruiting someone or you're a part of something, if you've circled yourself with people that have the ability to push themselves past what they perceive as their limits and what I call go the extra mile, then you have a chance to have a successful team and be a part of something successful. But if you inherit players that maybe have never won at anything, then I think the difficulty, especially at the college level, is how long and how much it takes for them to understand the level of commitment that it takes to win.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And you started your career, your college career at least, at Ouachita Baptist, and then you transferred to Little Rock. Talk a little bit about that process. Like, what attracted you to make that move to Little Rock?
Yeah, I mean, I started at Ouachita because at the time when I was growing up, Ouachita Baptist University was really a premier program in the state of Arkansas. You had Arkansas, and then you had Ouachita, and really the tradition, if you go back to the NAIA days, and Ouachita was really good, and they had an iconic coach named Carolyn Moffitt. And unfortunately, my second year at Ouachita, she retired, and I was, in that realm that a lot of student athletes get in. I mean, they go to a place because they want to play for a certain coach and play for a certain type of atmosphere and culture. And when that coach leaves, unfortunately, a lot of players decide, just like I did, that they want to go, pursue a different opportunity for a different situation. And that's where I decided to go to Little Rock. I really appreciate Babs, who was coaching at the time. I mean, I had a good relationship with her because she had recruited me out of high school. And it was just one of those situations where I thought, okay, I'm going to start over with something different. And it was a great opportunity for me. I got a lot of a great, I guess you would call nuggets during that time. Had a chance to work with Van Compton also, and just made a lot of really great contacts while I was there, and had a chance to maybe elevate my leadership capabilities because she kind of put the ball in my hands and let me lead quite a bit those 2 years. So it was I thought a good stepping stone for me as far as what's next in your life and what career do you want to go into, because at the time I was at Ouachita, I wasn't really going into coaching.
It's interesting listening to you talk about kind of the nuggets that you've learned. It just shows kind of the building blocks of our career in terms of how those all those experiences really impacted the person you are today and the coach you are today. So talk a little bit about how Little Rock impacted your life and kind of charted a course for this career that you found yourself in.
Yeah, like I said, I think that once you become a junior in college, you probably should start thinking about what's next in life. And at that point, there were no professional teams to play in the United States. There was really very little opportunity to go overseas. So at the time I was getting out of college, like, you had to decide what was, what career you wanted to go into. And it was a bit of a challenge for me at first because I didn't necessarily think coaching was the right thing as far as, what women should go into. At that time, there was a little bit of a stigma to it. And I just really decided, after my experience at Little Rock in particular, being around Babs and Van and having someone sort of foster women, which both of them did. They sort of empowered us there and made us feel good about being a female coach. And then really, honestly, even watching Mike Newell practice every day, at that time, I don't know if anybody remembers Mike being there, but he was an unbelievable coach. And, every day I would go to practice early and watch the guys practice. And you started to figure out, okay, this is something that I think I want to do and something I would be very passionate about. So, really, Little Rock, I don't know that I would have made that decision had I stayed at Ouachita, because it was a different environment. So I think that it was, again, being around Van and Babs, and Van was just so, as you all know, full of energy and full of life and full of leadership, that she permeated through our department.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you leave Little Rock and then you go to Valonia High School in Arkansas. And it's interesting because people see you're the head coach now. So they're like, oh, Karen's always been a head coach and she's always been kind of big time. But when you were the head coach there at Valonia, you drove the bus too. So you were head basketball coach, drove a school bus, also coached track. So talk a little bit about that progress in terms of, hey, the progression that you've made to kind of get to the point where we see you now?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly believe that there are a lot of college coaches right now that are not going through what we all say players should go through. Players should go through that process of learning and the journey that it takes to be a good basketball player, that you don't just arrive and you're it. And I think that is getting missed a little bit in the coaching profession. I think a lot of players are going from playing careers straight into coaching at the college level. And I couldn't ask for a better journey, and one that I would probably needed. I needed to coach in high school. I needed to, what I guess people would call, pay your dues. And I definitely did that. And I wouldn't trade those years that I had at Bologna. I wouldn't trade the 1 year at Northside for anything, because it taught me, it definitely taught me the value of hard work, because, at Bologna, like you said, I coached track, cross country. I coached 7 through 12. I loved coaching those 7th graders as much as I loved coaching the high school. And it taught me really basically the importance of fundamentals. I don't know that I would have understood that, but it's the basis of everything. And so when you teach a 7th grader, you start with fundamentals, and you build and you build and you build. And really that's what everyone should do from a career standpoint. So it was driving the bus and having those relationships that I built with the people in Bologna, the players I still stay in touch with a lot. They are an integral part of my life and a very, very important part of my journey as a coach. It was a priceless opportunity for me.
Yeah, and we've heard this, theme of relationships, as you kind of chronicled certainly like your career, and you talked about it. And then, so when you left Bologna, you went to your first college coaching job at Baylor, working for Coach Sonia Hogue. And so talk a little bit about that transition, what you learned there, and what made you take that jump from high school to get on the college track.
Yeah, I didn't ever thought about college coaching. I got into high school coaching. I loved it. I was very passionate about it. I guess probably really what sort of fueled my fire, believe it or not, is the impact that Joe Foley had on my life and my career. And you all know that Joe's at Little Rock, and I think is one of the best coaches that will ever coach women's basketball that nobody knows about. But just the regional area. But I used to go to watch practice all the time. Anytime I had a free moment, I would go watch Joe practice at Arkansas Tech. And then I got to know Gary Blair and Sue Donahoe and people that were at the University of Arkansas at the time. And that sort of fueled, again, people that fuel your passion are people that set examples for you. And I started to think, okay, maybe this is something that I want to do. I want to, pursue college. And Sanja was so incredibly giving in the sense of, giving me an opportunity. She didn't know me very well. I had met her in an all-star game when I was at Bologna. And, I knew her career. I knew what she had done at Louisiana Tech. And so I pretty much just was like, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And, that first year, I say all the time, my job was driving Miss Sanja. I really wasn't a coach at all. I didn't do anything other than make sure she was where she was supposed to be. But it was such a great learning experience for me. I learned how to recruit. I learned, I was under a guy named Larry Tidwell that was, a master at recruiting. But Sanja taught me really kind of that next level commitment that it takes, being in the community, embracing a different side of basketball than just the X's and O's of it. And I think that was really a critical learning experience for me as a young coach.
And you think about, taking that theme of just working for legendary coaches or legendary folks, as we think about, the progress that we've made in terms of women in college athletics. You also worked with Jody Conrad, Chris Plonsky, Judy Rose, all of them pioneers in terms of making sure that women had equal opportunities in intercollegiate athletics. Can you talk a little bit about the impact they had on your life?
Oh gosh. Again, my first experiences, as a basketball player was with a male coach. And so that's all I knew until I got into college. And that's why I mentioned Babs and Van, and Carolyn, because those were people that taught me a little bit about leadership with women, Title IX, all of those opportunities Carolyn Moffitt could be in that category as far as pioneers. She absolutely was a pioneer. So I'm very gifted from a sense of being put in situations where kind of by osmosis, you learn about the history of basketball. Again, being around Sanja and learning what all she had to do to recruit and to build that program at Louisiana Tech, and then be around Jody for all of those years and hear all of the stories of what they did that people don't know about or appreciate because of what we have now. I mean, if you go down the line and you talk about all of those people, you talk about Sanjay, you talk about Judy Rose is, and just was an unbelievable administrator. I've never met anyone like her as far as taking care of your coaches. And then on the other side, really being committed to women's athletics while you're in charge of an entire athletic program. And I just think that she was such a gift to me for my first head job, to have someone that really cared about me as a person, cared about my growth as a coach, and told me the hard things along the good, but then taught me the history along with Jody, Chris. I worked for Kim Mulkey for a year. If you go down the line, it's an unbelievable group of people that I had a chance to learn from. And that's, the nuggets that you pick up. Each one of them taught me something different, but I think what they all taught me the most of is the appreciation for what people in the past have done to give us the opportunity to do what we're doing right now. None of it would be possible had they not fought and kind of gone against the grain when it wasn't the cool thing to do.
Yeah, and thinking along those themes, obviously, we've talked about your progression, we've talked about what you've learned, and you've been coaching now for more than 25 years. And so what do you find most rewarding?
Don't date me now.
Well, that just means you're seasoned, it just means you're seasoned.
Right.
So, but what do you find most rewarding, and what kind of things are you trying to impact and impart on, the women that you work with?
Yeah, I've changed a lot with that. I will say I have a great deal of perspective. The year that I took off last year, after the departure at Texas, it was a disappointing departure. But to be honest with you, as long as I've been doing this, it was a gift from God to be able to take a year off and take a deep breath and, be with my family and reflect, find a little balance in life. And so now, I'm at a point in my career where I think I can reflect back and recognize what I enjoy the most about coaching. And it really is impact. It's mentorship. It's making sure that you help young people reach their potential, whether it's academically, socially, obviously athletically. It's probably the biggest thing right now that I want to focus on, and the things that I enjoy the most. You get to a point where you enjoy the process more than you enjoy game day. I'm excited about November 9th for UTSA to see if, we can put a better product on the floor and people can be proud of us and all of that. But really I'm enjoying the journey with these young women to see them gain confidence in themselves, learn how to make great decisions, figure out what their future holds for them academically. So those are the things that have really become maybe more of a focus for me. I think probably the other focus that I've learned to appreciate and learn to try to hone in on is the mentorship of other coaches. I've always felt like I had a big hand in helping others move on and move forward, but I think I have a different perspective on it now. I think I am more focused on teaching, them and maybe, to be honest with you, maybe listening more. What is it that I need to give them, but able to know the answer to that, you have to actually listen to people and hear what they have to say and let them tell you what they need, and then try to process how can you help them get that. And I think that's become a bigger focus for me.
That's great. And then just thinking about, why we're here today, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Can you just talk about the impact of that landmark law and kind of the changes that it ushered into college athletics and opportunities for women?
Oh gosh, it's affected everything about women's sports in general. I mean, the people that fought for Title IX, and again, I was at a university that was in the forefront for that, at the University of Texas. I mean, Jody was obviously in the forefront, Chris was, and Donna Lopiano. So I could go down the line and talk about all the women. I mean, one of the people that I've emulated probably as a young coach and would have traveled around the world to go watch coach was Pat Summitt. And, I had the opportunity at Charlotte to meet Kay Yao. So I've had so many, chances to be around people and hear their stories and hear the things that they did to enable what we saw last night. If anybody watched the WNBA game, I mean, what a phenomenal atmosphere that was. I mean, it was a sellout in Phoenix. And, those guys don't really realize that opportunity happened because of what happened 50 years ago. And I think that, the more we talk about it, the more it's recognized, the more we'll appreciate it. Knowledge is power. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that the young people today understand why we are where we are, that it's not over by any means. I mean, last year's NCAA tournament is a direct reflection of the fact that we're not anywhere where we need to be. But I think that we wouldn't even be close to where we are without that situation and that iconic opportunity.
Yeah, and you mentioned last year's NCAA tournament, and if you think back to the very first NCAA tournament that we had in 1982 to last year, and to obviously to what we hope comes out of last year in terms of improvement for the NCAA tournament, can you just talk a little bit about just about that progress and about that kind of journey for women's basketball?
Well, I think that, it's social media, players that have grown up in a different atmosphere and they're not afraid to say what they think. I think that's awesome. But to be honest with you, it's kind of, that's a huge thing, what's going on at the NCAA tournament. But if you look at it like it's across the board, what's going on at the conference tournaments, what's going on with how we travel, what's going on with how we're marketed as opposed to men's basketball and other men's sports. We can talk about the NCAA tournament all we want to, and I hope that it's better. I didn't get a chance to be around it last year, but I obviously paid attention. It was here in San Antonio. So I was aware of all of it as I took the job here. But in my opinion, it's about way more than just the NCAA tournament. It's about way more than that. Again, I go back to, the simple fact of how we're marketed as opposed to how men's basketball is marketed. It's across the board. It's not just one weekend or 2 weekends or 3 weekends of the year. Like, we have to continue to fight for change that lasts throughout the entire year and permeates through everything that we do, not just one tournament.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think we're all cautiously optimistic that, the lessons that we learned will certainly kind of improve the championship. But as you said, it really is a broader discussion, which is why Title IX is so important, because it's helped us broaden the discussion. But clearly, we still have more work to do. Well, I really appreciate you, Karen, taking the time to come
Thank
and
you
help
so
us
much. This
celebrate.
is a great honor to be able to visit with you.
Yeah, and we really enjoyed our time with you. And thanks to our listeners for joining the podcast. We hope that you'll continue to listen to our special kind of Title IX series and tell others to check out our Sun Belt Conference podcast as well. So, Karen, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll certainly look forward to following the Roadrunners this year as you continue to impact women in positive ways. So thank you for your time today.